I'm Sam. I'm starting med school in August, and I'm a TF here in chemistry. I grew up here, but I lived away for like 8 years before moving back to do the post-bac program.
Hi, I'm Sawyer. I also grew up around here, and then I went to University of Wisconsin for undergrad. I came back here and I got my Master's of Arts in Medical Sciences at Boston University. And I am also going to go to med school in August, but yeah.
I'm Mike. I went to BU and graduated in 2007. I had a very low undergraduate GPA and even lower science GPA. And so when I decided I was going to pursue medical school, it seemed like a bit of a pipe dream. I started the program here in the fall of 2009, took the MCAT this time last year, and I'll be starting in July in medical school.
I'm Daniel. I went to college in California at UC Santa Barbara. Yeah, I know, Cali. And I'll be going back to California for medical school, which I'm very happy about. And I did almost no science in my undergraduate. I think I took maybe one or two math courses and like 1/4 of science, and that's it. And now I'm here in chemistry TF, like a couple of us actually, and I'll be going to medical school in August.
Okay, so I'm going to ask the first question. You know, there's so many, I think, really overwhelming factors, I think, to applying to medical school. So if you could tell us one thing that we should know that's like most important, what do you think it would be?
Early.
Yes.
Everything early. MCAT early, applying early, even the inventory to Owen Peterson early. If you're getting sponsorship from the Health Careers Program, just number one, everything early.
I think it's helpful. I'm not sure if it really gets you a higher chance of getting into medical school. It might, but it's just really, really nice to get everything done early and get maybe an acceptance early or something like that. It's so, so nice. You just get the stress off of like you're early in the year, or maybe not even like midway through and you get acceptance, you're just like undone. If you wait till late to apply and everything, it gets a lot more stressful, it's more competition. Definitely early is better.
I was also, and in my master's program that I just took, we have these advisors who are on the Office of Admissions at BU. So when they give you advice, it's like pretty good to listen to it. So their advice actually was to apply as early as possible. That way you're not compared against all the other people who have already gotten in. You're just being compared against, they're just basically accepting people with like MCAT scores that aren't ridiculous, GPAs that aren't ridiculous. You're not being compared to those people who have already gotten in, who have like 45s and whatnot. So, I don't know. That was the advice that they gave us.
I would echo that, but also just be aware of your own, what's going on in your life at the same time. I took the MCAT in June, and that worked best for me because that was after finals, and I still was able, you can hand in your secondaries before so I took my MCAT June 16th, which meant it was released July 17th, but I handed in all my secondaries before that, so I got my first interview invite by August 1st. So it's okay to take the June MCAT. At the same time, and that also goes into, don't rush things if they don't need to be. Like I remember one of the first secondaries I handed in was for Columbia, and after I hit okay, I found like a massive typo in it. And I was like, oh my gosh. So don't rush through things just for the sake of getting it in like on the first day.
When is the first day in general? When did you say
First week of June.
Yeah.
Primary application, yeah, is first. And then they start emailing you secondaries a couple weeks after that.
And then also note, if you take the MCAT, you're not going to get your grade back for another month. And they're not going to like process your application until you get your MCAT score in. So also factor that into when you're going to take your MCAT.
Yeah, it's also really nice to do the MCAT before you get your application in, just so you can get a idea of what your score is. Because your score doesn't determine everything for application, but it's nice to just get a sense of where you are in relationship to what the school's like median and upper like 90% or 10 percentile MCAT score is, just to see if you fit a little better with the school.
Do people take it like, sorry, Do people take it in April, find out in May, and then retake it in June?
It's
Is it
possible. It's possible. I took it in April just in case I could, if I needed to retake it, but I didn't need to. So I just took it in April, had it done by May. You got all my schools selected, applied in June, and it all worked out.
Being fresh off the application process, aside from doing everything early, do you think you could take us through a quick run through of the steps that the application process involves, starting from right when the AMCAS opens up, things that you did or things that you didn't do and wish you had done? It's a broad question, but I mean, just sort of
There's a lot of
going,
steps.
going through the big steps in your mind, I guess, is sort of.
I actually brought in a piece of paper if anybody wants to see this, but something that really helped me with the application process is making a spreadsheet. And it sounds like
Yeah.
really generic and easy and something everybody does, but if you make a spreadsheet with all the schools you applied to, when you sent in your secondary application, when you got it back, the average GPA of the school, the average MCAT of the school, it really, really helps you to like gauge like how you're doing and when everything should be in. And that way you can also kind of have like a rejected column, which hopefully doesn't have a lot of check marks in it, but there's also exactly an interview column. But it's also like when you submit your secondary, it's good to have kind of an idea when you think you're going to get it back. And sometimes you can prioritize your schools too. I'm sure everyone wants to go to certain schools over others. Like, wow, Harvard Medical School, like I'm gonna get that application in super early because I really want to go there. So that helps you prioritize that way, keeps you organized.
I would take a step back actually before the MCAS opens. I would write your personal statement while you're studying for the MCAT. And something that I forgot to mention in the what's the most important thing about applying, for pretty much all of us, we're all choosing medicine after initially choosing some other career. And really the most important, useful piece of advice I got last year was that in your personal statement, you have to somehow work in why you changed your mind. Because basically they're not going to invite you in for an interview just to ask you that question. So you have to make it extremely clear why you changed from career X to medicine and make a really compelling case as to why this is now the right final career for you. And I would like read a book with some successful medical school essays just to get an idea of what you want your voice to be. So I would do that while studying for the MCAT, and then once you've taken the MCAT, you're waiting the like agonizing month to get your score, you polish off your personal statement, you get your score, hopefully you don't have to take it again, and then boom, you just send in your AMCAS. So doing things kind of like at the same time is really important.
I'd like to just make one comment though. I think the most important thing for a personal statement, I mean, saying how you're transitioning from what you did before into medical school is great, but the most important thing is showing how you're unique and different, which is something you can all do being non-traditional students who are doing a post-bac. Like most undergraduates just go straight from their biology major or some science major straight into medical school, maybe not even taking a year off. And the thing I've noticed from all my interviews and everything, people are really, really, really interested in how you are different from just the normal student. Like through all my interviews, people have been interested in all the things I did that were not science related. Those were far more talked about than any volunteering or any research I did. They're very concerned with what I was doing, like in my undergraduate, like I studied abroad in India. Everyone asked me about that. I spent a couple years in Japan. Everyone asked me about that. The first thing you write on your personal statement should be something that shows how different and diverse you are. Then you can transition into how that makes you like a great medical student or be a good doctor. We should show how different and diverse you are.
There's a question. Carly, do you have a question?
Yes. Would you mind, maybe each one of you, if you had something that you'd say specifically you wouldn't do, or two things you wouldn't do? Things you did that you shouldn't have done, or would have done different?
You used to have a lot of those, man.
From undergrad, sure.
No, just in the application process.
Yeah.
I would say, I think that, okay, here's a little bit of my backstory too. I took the MCAT and applied to med school 3 times. I didn't do a post-bac like you guys. I knew I wanted to be a doctor, and I was a pre-med undergrad, but I had to take the MCAT 3 times and apply 3 times in order to get into med school. And having finally gotten in, it's amazing, but let me tell you, when you have to take the MCAT 3 different times, it's very, very difficult. When you have to write 3 essays to the same school, which are all the same essays, it's just changing it year to year is just so difficult. Like, how are you diverse? Okay, the next year, how are you diverse? Oh, I got way more diverse than you guys. No, you didn't. So what I would say, especially when it comes to the MCAT, for you who are studying, really, really make sure you go all out. Don't be like, you know what, like I'll see how it goes. I'll cancel my score if I'm freaked out during the day. Don't do that. Go all in. Go all in the first time, because if you don't, you're gonna regret it and you're gonna have to do the whole thing over again. And yeah, that's my advice.
Oh, are we?
Yeah, I think we're still going.
Yeah, okay. These are like sort of specific, I guess. The first one is, I didn't realize how much money this was. I didn't realize how much the primary application, the secondary application, traveling for interviews cost. I would say I applied to too many medical schools. I applied to 29 medical schools, which was, and I filled out 28 secondaries, which was a full-time job in the summer. And eventually I realized that was way too many. And I started to withdraw from places, but it could have saved me probably thousands of dollars if I had just, you know, instead of freaking out and applying everywhere, but applied to more specific schools that I was more interested in instead of just everything, you know? And just with interview season, I mean, depending on how many interviews you get, it can really consume your life with all the traveling, especially if you apply to places pretty far away, and also cost a lot of money. So just make sure you budget time and money-wise accordingly.
I would say, this isn't fun to say, but basically don't trust your letters of recommendation writers that they will get things
So
out
true.
on time.
So true.
All right, even like your favorite people that are writing your letters,
Yeah.
just like really stay on them until they actually send your letter into Owen or whomever is receiving your letters. Because if a few weeks go by and one person or 2 people are holding up your application, that really sucks because you've worked so hard to, like we said, get in everything early. And if that one part is out of your hands, that really sucks. And that can, you know, delay your application by a few weeks, maybe a month. And you don't want them to rush the letter either, because then it's a sucky letter. So just kind of stay on them, keep reminding them, do it in as nice a way as you can, and get your letters in, basically. You had a question about that?
Yeah, is, the letters, do they go into Owen first, and so
Yeah, they
Owen
do.
is actually waiting for your
Oh,
letters
yeah.
as well? Okay.
He assembles them in a thing and sends the thing to MCAS. There you go. One of those.
Composite
And
letter.
there you go. Yeah.
They go
exactly.
along
Committee
with the
composite.
actual letter that they write. They include them.
And this goes along with getting your inventory in early too, because if you get that in early, it gives you like so much clout with Owen. He's like, oh, you turned this in February.
Yeah.
I'm going to drop everything right now and write your committee letter. And that is actually a true
That's
story. Even though he doesn't write your committee letter until all of your letters of recommendation in, if you're in one of those situations where one of your letters is really late, he'll say something like, oh, as soon as this person gets the letter in, then I will drop everything and write your letter. And he's very truthful about that. So, yeah, that's what I would say.
What is the timing of the composite letter with your primary application? Is it going when you submit AMCAS, or? how does that
No,
work?
don't you submit your primary and then like the letters come after it?
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
you can, because the letters go with your secondary. You can submit your primary without having any letters of recommendation submitted. But no one is going to review your application until the secondary is in, which includes the letters of
Right.
application, your letters of recommendation.
But oftentimes you submit your primary, you wait like 3-4 weeks
Yeah.
for them to even send you the secondary. So you have some time
Yeah.
there.
Okay.
You have a little time. But it's best to get it done all
Yeah.
early, of
Oh,
course.
I want to emphasize that it's
Yeah.
important to get it early. I'm not sure if you mentioned
This concept of early.
I think
3 letters, is it?
Yeah.
What's that?
3 letters was it?
Oh,
Seven.
What's that?
I had 9.
6.
I think I'm 5, 4, or
I
5.
forget.
I always ask
You
for an
amassed
extra one
them.
in case one
Yeah,
falls
yeah,
through.
yeah.
One of mine fell through and I had an extra one, so
Okay.
it ended up being okay.
Yeah.
Also, just a quick note, I think you can turn in your primary June 1st, but they open it May 1st, so there's a worksheet, because it takes a
Oh,
long
yeah.
time to fill it out, because you have to enter like every activity
Every
you've ever
class.
done. And
Yeah.
as being an older student, you've done like a lot of activities in your life,
Yeah.
so it takes a long time.
They also just last year added a section where you have your work activities section, right? And there's only 15 slots where you put in all of the conferences you've went to, all the volunteer stuff you've done, all the jobs you've held. But they've added 3. You can take and elaborate on 3, like an extra couple paragraphs. So that might also be a good thing to think about. Because I know when I was looking at the application, I'm like, oh, I can check this box. What does this do? And this whole other box of just like,
Yeah.
you have another 1,000 characters to write. Great.
And you're like, okay. Great.
So if any of you are like maybe in the first year of the program or still have some opportunity to do some volunteering or something, it's really good to get like 3 places like where you know someone really well. And so even like one of the schools I did secondary for, they said for all of those ones where you wrote like a meaningful, those are called meaningful experiences, those 3 extra things you could do on your application, they wanted to see if you had a letter of recommendation from those people because they were just really interested in those 3 different experiences you have. So if you have 3 experiences, or you have maybe just 2 which you think are good, try to get one more. Just one place where you can go for a few months, no person, get a letter of recommendation, and have something really great you can write down that shows, I don't know, research or volunteering or just something totally different that's unique about you.
Are those medically related?
Was
They-
that?
No,
They don't have to be.
I wrote about, I think I actually wrote about study abroad, I did. Yeah, I think I wrote about study abroad, I did.
I think running was one of mine.
Running, really?
That's awesome. That makes you look unique, right? That's the way to go.
They love that.
That was one of mine.
Anything you're passionate about,
Yeah.
they want to see passion. They don't want you to try to like impress them because they can see right through that. So basically, in your personal statement and in your AMCAS application, just be passionate. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that carries into your interview too. You want to talk about things that you're actually passionate about because they want to see excitement. They don't want to see like a flatline person who's just like. So it's,
How many interviewers asked about those 3 experiences?
I think, well, I did like my study abroad, and I think I even working in Japan, so almost everyone.
Yeah.
Just because those most interesting things about me.
pretty much, yeah.
I think me too. I think it depends what interviewers you get because every interview in every school is different.
Yeah.
But a lot of the times, the things that you're writing those significant, what did you call them again? Meaningful experiences about are things that are like big and like help develop your character as a person and make you unique. So you're probably going to be talking about them anyways.
Yeah. Yeah.
Along the same line of trusting your recommendation people, what do you think about actually waiting the form and not read your recommendation?
No, I didn't read any of mine.
Yeah, just wait.
Yeah.
Yeah, just wait.
It shows a lot of class. Just on the.
You're not. I feel like you're not going to ask somebody for a letter of recommendation if they're going to give you a bad one.
Right.
So you just got to trust them and be like, all right, you know, like I'm letting you write me a letter of recommendation. Hook it up. You can't just.
Yeah.
You know, I wouldn't read it after.
They might say like, I can't write much about you, so
Yeah.
you might want to choose someone else. Nudge, nudge. They might say that,
Yeah.
but
I hate you.
Yeah. Yeah, if they hint at all, then maybe I couldn't do it. Just drop it there. Because if they're hinting, then, you know, the letter they write is just going to be mediocre at best. Like all the people ask for recommendations are people I knew for a bit. And like if you're looking for a recommendation, go talk to the person before. Like I got a recommendation from the volunteer coordinator at Mass General. Mass General was like 1,000 volunteers there. I think more than that. But I just went to the guy who was in charge. I didn't even work with him during my regular volunteer job. I just talked to him a few times. Like every few weeks, I just go and be like, hey, I'm doing this. I'm interested in this. Like, you know, I'm going to apply medical school. Like, would you write a letter of recommendation? He's like, okay. And I talked to him a bit. So just make sure you know all of your recommenders before, get to know them, and make sure they know you and that they know something about you. They don't even have to like know exactly what you do in your work, but just as long as they know you as a person, that's the most important part.
and nurture your relationship with them.
Yes.
Don't not talk to them for 3 years and then be like, hey, give me this.
I'm in medical school now.
So it's like 6, 7 recommendations,
Well,
and like how many have to
Is
be?
there a minimum?
if you
I think
can
they were
apply.
like 5
Two
to 7
science.
on the
Yeah.
At least
I think
two
we have
science.
that.
All the schools
And-
ask, like, if you don't have a committee letter, like all the schools for secondary, they want like 3 letters. They say 3 letters maximum.
Undergraduate
If you do-
biological
yeah,
science
2
people.
2 science letters, like
Yeah.
1 non-science. If
Sometimes-
you do committee, I put like 5
Yeah.
letters on there. I wonder if they're even reading.
And the committees count.
Yeah.
I wonder if like,
Right.
yeah.
Sometimes they say they
Committees
want,
count?
science.
I think committee counts as a letter.
Okay.
That's what I heard a while ago,
I don't know.
so I'm not sure.
Sometimes they want one from undergrad too, or grad school too,
Yeah.
if you went to
Yeah.
grad school.
If you've been out of school for a while.
That's a huge thing. So my buddy also interviewed at BU recently, and they asked him if he had a letter of recommendation from his most recent job, and he didn't. And
Yeah.
he said that didn't look very good and didn't reflect very well on him.
Yeah. Actually, that happened to me with BU because I got a job at Mass General in January before, like during the application, and I didn't want to ask my person for a recommendation because I just started working
Yeah.
there. And then BU emailed me and asked me if I could get a letter of recommendation
Wow.
from them
Sorry.
in December, which was, I didn't even know that. But sort of random to keep that in mind.
But on that same line of thought too, maybe it'd be better if you focused on getting, obviously, I think it's important that you get people who know you and are prestigious at the same time, but if you have a letter of recommendation that you're not, like, again, I applied 3 times, so I was way out of college when I was submitting my application. So I had a letter of recommendation from like my freshman, I think chemistry professor, and he didn't really even know me. I went up to him and asked him for a letter, and it was like generic letter. So maybe you don't need to include that, because if you're submitting 7 or 8 letters, you don't want them to read one that's just a generic one that doesn't say anything special about you.
So Daniel, we never actually got to you in terms of what if you could do something like
Oh.
over.
I'd probably just agree with what Sam said. After I applied, I didn't even apply to many as Sam, but I still felt like it might have been a little too many. I applied to 24, I think. And writing secondary takes a really long time. It was all summer. Just boring, repetitive. Oh, it was awful. And I turned down 1 interview because I got a bunch and I didn't really want to go to the school after all.
I turned down 4 interviews.
I turned out
Yeah.
8 interviews.
Wow.
I know, this
Well, I
is
got into my first choice
Oh.
right away.
Yeah, this is a little unusual. I don't want to tell people not apply to that many schools, because some people don't get in at all. I think the postbacks tend to get in more just because we're a little different and a little bit more diverse.
Comment on that, because I read something in one of those books that said, don't apply to a school you definitely don't want to go to, because if you have to go the 2nd round or the 3rd round, then the way it is now with the competition, that you won't, they'll say, well, you got admitted here, why didn't you go? If you got accepted to this.
Oh, you mean deciding not to go to med school
Yeah,
if you've
you
gotten
haven't
in
accepted.
somewhere you don't want to go?
Yeah, just don't apply to a place you don't want to go to.
That-
You're just wasting time and money for the secondary,
Yeah.
going to interview, and then it's just, if you get in, it's such a school, or location you really don't want. It's just a waste.
On the opposite side of the coin, this was my last shot applying to med school. There's kind of there's an unspoken 3 application rule. I don't know, and a 3 MCAT rule. I don't know if you guys know this, but it was my last shot and I had to go all in. So I'll be honest, the first school I got an interview at was Hofstra, which is in New Jersey, which I have no connection to New Jersey. I had one friend that went to Hofstra. I didn't have a great experience there. But honestly, if that was the only med school I got into, it's an American accredited med school.
Yeah.
I would get a great education. I would happily go. But that's, again, only in last ditch 3 time scenarios. But yeah, it's a huge waste of money. I had a friend who applied to 65 med schools, and he's like, you know what? I just want to get in somewhere. I'm like,
Did
you
he?
need to think. I think he got an interview at 1, honestly.
Oh.
And you got to think about how much money he just wasted if he was more smart about it. What if he took another year and just made his application a little bit better? He would have saved so much money. It's worth. This is another thing that I wanted to say, which I know you guys are all postbacks, but One thing I wish that I did in the past was right out of undergrad, I thought I had to go to medical school. And I took the MCAT right after I graduated. I got 27, which wasn't great, but I thought maybe some school would accept me, and they didn't. And in retrospect, I should have taken some time and like thought about it. And it doesn't really matter when you go to med school in retrospect. This is what I hear from a lot of my physician mentors at Children's Hospital. It's like, when they look back at their life, it's not, I started med school when I was 24 versus I started med school when I was 26 or 27. You want to take that extra year and get that experience and mature as an adult before you get to med school. Because if you're in med school and you're trying to mature and grow as a person, it's just not the same experience as if you've already had that before you apply. I just want to say.
I would say that's huge. That's really, really huge. Definitely.
Sorry.
Hi.
This is maybe like the one question I have. Sorry. Do you feel like it's possible to, like with time-wise for secondaries, do you think it's possible to work over the summer, do all your secondaries, and take a class?
And take a class.
And take a class?
That's like the one thing.
How much work? Like part-time, full-time?
Like TFing and
yeah.
Just
Oh, you mean like a summer class?
Yeah, summer class.
Oh, that's intense.
Yeah, not worth it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not worth it.
I was working like 25 hours a week during summer, and I mean, that was fine. That was pretty relaxing, actually, just doing the secondary. But I wouldn't want to work like 40 or 50 hours a week. And
Yeah.
it takes
I
a
mean,
lot
it
of
depends how
time.
many you're doing,
Yeah.
but
I mean, they take a lot of time.
because you want to make them good, you know,
Mhm.
edit them. You know, you have to every time you do a secondary, you have to research the school, see what programs they're strong in, and then be
lie
like,
and
I'd
do-
love to work with like
I
this,
know,
you know,
embellish.
doctor and do
Yeah, really.
research and XYZ, you know. So it takes a long time.
There's so much lying. I hate to say it, but
Yeah.
there's so much lying.
There's so much,
Hey,
yeah.
Ben
In your
gave a trip.
secondaries.
I'm going to
Yeah.
tell this
But
Absolutely.
on the same line of thought, there's also redundancies. So if you get two schools that
I know.
have, why are you diverse? Delete
Right.
BU,
Yeah.
insert New York.
Yeah.
Be so
Yeah.
careful with that too. If that's your typo, then that's like the typo
Yeah.
of a lifetime.
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah. Good luck with that one.
Yeah, I heard that in Tufts, they said, I talked to the admission committee, and there's like a couple students like, yeah, sometimes we get this as like, this is why I really want to go to BU. And they're like, what do you do with that? Like they say, yeah, sometimes if they're really good, we'll let them in, but we'll give them an interview, but man, that's hard. That's just totally shooting yourself.
Do you want your doctor though to be careless when they're subtracting? Like that's the most important word I feel like in that
Yeah.
whole essay.
We're going to remove your appendix? Wait.
Oh no, wait, that's your liver.
No,
wait.
liver.
Do you
Yeah.
guys know anybody who just like applied to 5 to 7?
I don't know.
How
Most
many
people
guys-
did like 15 to 20.
That's
a
It's
good
the
one,
good
yeah.
amount
How
because
many colleges do you guys apply to as undergrads?
One.
undergrad.
Really?
Wait.
Wow.
I don't.
I applied to like
remember.
12.
I graduated in 07. I transferred colleges, so I.
I
did
transferred
twice.
too, yeah.
Search is huge explosion coming from 30 schools applying.
What?
What's that?
Versus exploded like applying to
It's-
30 schools.
Like, why did I apply to that many?
I
I. Oh, it is a little crazy. I picked cities that I thought I would want to live in and applied to every school in that city. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
picked Boston, New York, Philadelphia, Chicago, DC, and then all of California. That's big cities. Yeah, my fiance was important in deciding which cities we would want to live in. So I did it solely on location, where he could make his job work, because there's just a lot of different factors you have to consider when you're selecting where to go. With that said, I could have pruned it down. For example, I interviewed at Drexel, and when I was like, would I actually go to this school? No.
Yeah.
Why did I just fly to Philadelphia? Like,
Get a cheesesteak.
yeah. I mean, nothing against Drexel, but in terms of like my life and changing everything just to go there wouldn't work.
Be more confident in yourself. Just like, or have confidence in yourself when you're applying to schools. Don't be like, oh, I really don't want to go to this school, but I'll apply because maybe
Yeah.
they're the only school that's going to want me. Don't think that way. Think like, okay, I'm wantable. I'm
Yeah.
desirable. I am worthy to go to some of these at least mid-tier med schools. And if you approach it with that mentality, then you'll apply to fewer schools. You'll save a lot of money, and you won't sell yourself short by applying to a school that you don't really have any desire to go to. Aside from the fact that it's an American, continental U.S. medical school.
How many did you apply to?
24.
So everyone's taking the shotgun approach.
Yeah, I mean, and now we're like saying, don't do
bigger
that.
shotguns in the world.
I mean, you just
They're
don't
much
know
bigger.
how
65
like
caliber.
they're gonna receive your application, you know? Like, I don't know, I had some friends who didn't get in anywhere who I thought were strong applicants, and I was really shocked, and that scared me. So I said,
Yeah.
okay, I'm gonna apply to I'm gonna just pick all these places and apply to every school in those places.
And the schools know you're applying to 30 other, like, they have.
No, they don't get it.
Some interviewers asked me where else you applied, which I
That
really
sucks.
didn't like.
Okay.
I just
That's
said,
not
oh,
okay.
I applied to the East Coast and Broadly.
Just name all the best schools in the country. That's the
Right.
Harvard.
But they don't, they can see in March when they hand out most of the acceptances, on March 15th, they can see where you've gotten into school. So if you've gotten into 10 schools
In your holding places.
in your holding places, they might not,
I didn't
yeah.
know that.
I gotta reject some places.
me
Yeah.
too.
I think the real main reason though is basically echoing what she said is that you apply to the 24 med schools just in case you get into those 2 or 3. Even if they're not your top tier, you still can kind of choose from those safety schools. It's kind of when you're comparing it to undergrad, I think it's a lot different than undergrad because when you apply to undergraduate universities, I feel like it's much easier to get in. To even a decent school. But medical schools, even the ones that aren't even ranked or towards the bottom, it's still very, very hard to get into. You still have to have an almost perfect application to get into even some of the worst schools, even the new schools.
And it's also totally random. I got interviews at places where were total reaches for me, and then I didn't get interviews at places that were safeties for me, that my stats were above. It's just so random where you can sort of ballpark it, but it's just random where you end up hearing from.
About how many schools are there in the Boston, Massachusetts, or say
Massachusetts is
4-hour
full.
drive from there?
But then there's
If you
UVM,
include Brown,
UConn.
that's-
Yeah, and then
Brown.
10, 15?
Oh.
What else?
I don't know.
There's
I
not
don't
one in
know.
New
There's the
Hampshire.
MSAR, which is a
There's
list of
Durham.
every med school
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
US. You can go through that
Yeah.
and look through the different schools, and it gives all their stats of MCAT and blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah.
Scary.
Not a lot in the New England area, but I think when you start going to New York, there's a good amount in New
There's
York.
5 in New York City, more or less.
That's why it sucks to be from Massachusetts because there's only one public med school,
It's
and
really,
But if you get in,
Sucks. Massachusetts. I do have a question about the class requirements. The health careers program is obviously the main 4, but would you guys suggest branching out and taking extra science classes if possible?
Sure.
Yeah, some places are now requiring biochem. A lot of the California schools, Hopkins added it, Mayo. So I took it the fall as we're applying, so I would.
Yeah,
so
just-
you can still take them as your
Yeah, during the interview, you're like, oh, I'm taking biochem.
Exactly.
And they're like, that's great.
They want to see that you're still interested in science outside of the thing that'll get you into medical school.
Yeah.
So just just
just
stay in your
take all the
interests.
core ones like physics and bio, like gen bio and general physics and all that stuff before you apply. Because they want to see all the core ones.
Yes.
And then biochemistry or calculus or something that's few
And
schools
they don't even have
might.
to see that grade that you
Yeah.
took in the fall.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Yeah.
so just bomb it.
Tank it. Yeah.
There's a couple of schools actually ask for your transcript and your
Oh,
grades,
yeah.
ungrades.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so wait
Yeah,
until
don't get a
after
C.
the
Yeah.
spring semester. Like right
Don't
now, next year doesn't matter at all.
Yeah.
But fall semester could matter.
Also, sending in stuff too before your application has been processed. Some schools really like that, and some schools really hate that. So, as I was applying this last time, not this time, the time before, I was taking my master's program, and I kept sending every school every time I got a grade good grade in the program. and sometimes, I sent in my transcripts after first semester, and some schools were like, "Thank you very much, it'll go in your file." Other schools were like, "Please do not send us in any information unless we ask for it or you've been offered an interview." So. I also think that that's an important part of the admissions process, kind of feeling out what kind of schools you're applying to. I know this past time I did a lot of phone calling and talking to a bunch of people and emailing because you can kind of cater how you treat each med school to what they like. And I think that helped me with a lot of the med schools. I know I just got an interview at Albany, and I knew nothing about the med school, but I called once, and I talked to one of, it was like, I think even the Secretary of Admissions, and she was telling me that they really, really like community service. So recently, I work at Children's Hospital. I volunteered for this Ask Me program, and I wrote this whole long email about how I'm getting involved and all this stuff, and they loved it. And then 2 days later, they sent me an interview.
That's awesome.
So that's true too, and especially another school, UVM, they really like seeing interest. If you say that, even if it's a complete bold-faced lie, I don't want to say that, but if you say you just last week visited the campus, you loved it, you met med students, you really, really like it, and you're really, really interested in Vermont, and you have a connection to the state, they'll offer you an interview like that. My friend actually just recently did something like
So now
that.
they're gonna get like 25.
I want to go to your school, but
verbatim. I didn't do as much of that proactive type stuff. Like really the only proactive thing outside of like the general application cycle stuff was I just updated them in the fall on what I was doing with work and research and stuff like that in a single letter. And it was, in retrospect, it was really vanilla, and it was something that if I had received it and I was working in an admissions office, I would have been like, yeah, whatever, this guy's whatever. So yeah, but like actually getting on the phone, that's probably, actually I'm sure it's really, really good advice. So.
I have a question about how did you all prepare for your interviews?
There's a couple books about medical school interviews you can get. I don't remember the titles, but you can just search on Amazon for them.
Mock interviews. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's the book title.
That's my book. So there's a couple, but it's mostly just the basic interview questions like, why do you want to become a doctor? And then they'll always ask about the things you did that are a little different. They'll always ask about that, like the most meaningful experiences or whatever. They'll probably, I think I got a couple of questions about like why am I changing from, I did religious studies in my undergraduate. Got admitted to like a PhD program in religious studies and then quit that to come here. And so they're kind of interested in that, why I changed so much. And then I think those are the biggest ones, and then a few places ask me ethical questions. They like to do some, know that you've read over like medical ethics a little bit, like something about like people dying or what should you do, or maybe something about confidentiality. They present you a situation. You're just supposed to talk about it, like what you think is the best. That's something you actually have to research on your own a little bit.
It's not that hard though.
It's not that hard, but you should really spend some time actually studying a little bit about
healthcare too, the healthcare system.
And healthcare, because they would like to know that you're informed about healthcare, like current things that are happening in healthcare policy, medical ethics, and just knowledge of stuff that's relevant for being a doctor. You actually have to do a little bit of research in that stuff before you go into interviews.
They also ask like why you're interested in the school.
Always.
Yeah.
So just make sure you research the school beforehand, take some notes maybe on interesting programs they have or something about the curriculum or their hospitals.
The really awesome thing is a lot of times you can get afternoon interviews or morning interviews and choose them. So if you do the afternoon interviews, then you go on the tour of the campus before the morning. And so you can, when they ask you like, why do you want to go to the school? You're like, oh yeah, that Ronald Reagan Medical Center, that was awesome. I love that.
The mock surgical center that we went through. I touched every device. It was awesome.
The robotic surgery center. That was why I want to come here.
But yeah, I mean, I think actually you're going to talk about mock interviews.
I was just going to say that really practicing, really putting yourself in that daunting scenario is great practice before you actually have the real thing. Dress exactly, in my opinion, dress exactly how you're going to dress for that interview. And just do like 2 or 3 mock interviews with friends that I don't know, maybe one's going to be the good cop, one's going to be the bad cop and rip you apart. People that know what it's like to go through an interview process, if not a med school interview process. Even maybe a teacher would be willing to do it. I don't know. But
Did you do it with Dr. Fixon?
No. But I did it with a friend.
You can do it with Dr.
I did not know that actually, but a friend of mine gave me like the Fixon treatment and just was,
nailed the window shut and told you to open it.
No, like basically just asked me difficult questions that forced me to think about why I really wanted to be a doctor and really put me on the spot, which, I mean, I think Dr. Dixon is excellent. But if you've ever spoken to him one-on-one, sometimes you get that treatment that, like, why do you really want to be a doctor? And I think that's good, to have someone make you think about why you really want to do this and not just, like, charm your way through an interview. So
I think it's also really helpful when you get an interview at a certain school to seek out, I don't know, one of your buddies or somebody who goes to the school or someone through the grapevine that has had an interview at that school. Because if you're mentally prepared and you know, sometimes when you get the interview invitation, they don't tell you how many people you're going to interview with or what your day is going to be like. They're going to be like, be at this spot this day, you know? So if you know you're going to speak to 3 people that day, that might help you prepare. But again, reiterating, so I don't know if your program provides this, but at BU we actually had someone on the admissions committee who we could sign up to have an actual mock interview, and they would give you an interview like it was given in the BU admissions committee, and they would tell you what you need to work on afterwards, and I thought that really helped. But if you can't get access to that, I think if you have any friends that have gone through interviews, they know a lot of the questions, like the generic questions, like why do you want to be a doctor, like. But I've gone through a couple interviews in the past couple years, and a lot of the times now, this is what I'm seeing. From what you guys can chime in if I'm wrong. They just go through your work activities a lot or your application, and they'll just ask you questions about these big events. Like more than anything, that's what's happened to me. It's been like, when I was an undergrad, I developed this greenhouse aquaponics system and I won this competition for it. And that's what makes me look kind of unique, this like green initiative. And every single application I got asked about it. And so know yourself, go over it. If you're in a lab for research, make sure you can articulate what the research is actually about. Make sure you can articulate what you do in the research, molecularly, down, because they can ask you questions. If you get tripped up when they ask you questions about your own research, that's not good, you know? You should know every in and out, every like, not ridiculous, but like, you should know a lot about your own research, but
also, something I didn't know until I started interviewing was that a lot of these interviews, they're not like really grueling, you know, rapid fire question answer type things. They really are more conversational, more open-ended, more casual than I ever could have imagined. So you have that to look forward to. And while I would never, ever, ever recommend looking on the Student Doctor Network site, there is one bit of usefulness to it, which is the interview feedback section, where like they've collected data from like as far back as 2002, people that have interviewed at these schools, and they have like very specific questions for these people, like what were you asked, what was the hardest question, how many people are interviewing you. For example, I interviewed at Emory, and I had this like 3-person on 3-person interview. So 3 people that like were working at the school and 3 applicants. And knowing that ahead of time and being able to mentally prepare for that weird scenario that I never had anywhere else, that's huge. Because like if you just go in there, you're like, oh, it's gonna be me and 2 other people. Oh, and there's 3 of you too? That's really bizarre. So you have to like know ahead of time what you're getting into, basically. Specifically for that school, and as much as I hate the Student Doctor Network, and how much anxiety it can stir up in you. If you don't know what I'm talking about, if you've never been to that site, don't start now. It's horrible, but go when you're like interviewing, and go to the interview feedback section and search for the school. They have every single school in America, some elsewhere too.
Yeah.
Grace?
On that note, how many of the schools that you interviewed at, what percentage did you all accept it to? I feel like there's this, oh yeah, I got the interview. Was that kind of a...
Well, most schools by just percentage chance. Once you get an interview, it can be like 20 to 40% chance of getting in. It all depends on the school. Some schools will like interview so many applicants, and they just choose from a handful of those. And some schools will interview just a few applicants and choose many of them. It really depends, but it's roughly 20 to 40%.
I had a weird experience. You said you rejected 8 interviews.
Wow.
I only got 6. I got a relatively small amount of interviews, but so far I've gotten into 5 of them. So it really just depends.
So what's the hardest interview question that you've received?
I actually have to head out soon, but one of them, I don't know why, I just didn't have an answer for it, and I just sat there dumbfounded. The guy was like, explain a time when you've had to take a leadership role when you weren't expecting it. And I was like, it was dead silence for a minute, and I was like, I don't have an answer to that question. Can we get back to it? So, I mean, that one and then there's also, some schools do MMI in California, which is multiple mini interviews.
Miserable.
Which it was actually kind of fun. Basically, there's 10 different stations, and you have 3 minutes at each station, or 5 minutes, and it's a scenario. It's either, they'll have real actors in the room who are really upset, sobbing, and you have to comfort them, and there's a raider in the corner of the room watching you as you comfort them.
That's creepy.
It's pretty cool. And they're at first there's oh really, that sounds so weird, but you actually feel they're upset, which actually, I don't know, I thought it was a good way to learn about the person, because you learn how you comfort somebody or how you react to somebody who's angry, and there's no way to prepare for those. Absolutely no way. You just have to walk. Did you do one?
I had one at UCLA. They had multiple
It was
interviews.
pretty intense, but it was fun.
I didn't have actors though, it was just some PhD.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Was he a bad actor?
But it was, so that one was, I mean, you had to think on the spot, because they gave the scenario oh, this person is having a mental breakdown, what are you gonna do? And they're sobbing, and you can hug them, you can do whatever you want. So that was, I mean, you just have to do it. But that question about leadership, I didn't know what to say, so I just said I don't know.
I guess.
So
You can say I don't know.
yeah, which is fine.
I did that.
I said I don't know.
Question like that. I just said I don't know.
It's
Something
talk about leadership.
When
I can't
did you
think
have
of
this
one.
specific experience in your moment in your life? I'm I don't know.
They like that honesty, though. So anyway, I actually have to head out. But should we write our emails or something?
I did. Yeah, do that.
You want because people can email me if they have questions.
So I have two other questions too. So one question that a lot of people struggle with that you definitely need to prepare for